The haunted basement. When I was 10 years old, my parents decided to repaint our bedrooms. We had to sleep in the basement for the weekend while the rooms were being worked on. The basement wasn't exactly a cozy place. It was dark, cold, and had that musty smell you'd expect from a space that was rarely used. But what made it even creepier was the large boiler room next to the pull-out couch where I was sleeping. My youngest brother, Ben, who was only a year old at the time, had his crib down there as well. I had to look after him, so being down there wasn't as scary when he was around. Whenever he'd wake up crying, I'd take care of him, and that would distract me from the eerie surroundings. One night, however, everything changed. I woke up to Ben screaming. Not the usual whimpering or crying, but an intense scream, something I'd never heard from a 1-year-old. It instantly sent a cold chill through me. I rushed to his crib and saw him standing up, pointing towards the boiler room. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed his gaze. There was nothing visible, but the air in the basement felt thicker, colder. A feeling of dread washed over me. And then I heard it. The faint sound of something falling over in the boiler room, like a tin can or a bottle rolling on the floor. My entire body froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt like I was being watched. I grabbed Ben as quickly as I could, holding him tightly in my arms, and rushed out of that basement. I didn't even stop to think, I just ran up the stairs as fast as I could, locking the door behind me. I've never been able to go back into that basement again. Whatever happened down there that night still haunts me, and to this day, I wonder what Ben saw, or what was lurking in that dark, cold basement. The mysterious visitor. It was a quiet winter night when my friends and I arrived at a cabin we rented near South Lake Tahoe for a weekend skiing trip. The snow was falling heavily, and everything outside was covered in a blanket of white. The cabin was cozy and warm, a perfect refuge from the cold. On the third night, after we had enjoyed some hot drinks by the fireplace, I went into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. As I crossed the room, a sudden knock at the door startled me. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone, especially in the middle of a blizzard. I stood still for a moment, trying to decide if I should ignore it or open the door. But then, I noticed my car parked right outside. Whoever was knocking knew we were here. Maybe someone was lost or in need of help, so I decided to check. I tiptoed over to the door, trying to be cautious. I asked through the door, "Who is it?" but there was no answer. I asked again, louder this time, but again, nothing. The knocking stopped. Curious, I opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain lock on. I saw no one outside, but there were footprints in the snow leading away from the cabin. My heart began to race. I stepped outside to follow the tracks, which led me all the way to the edge of the property. And then, the tracks simply stopped. No sign of where the person went, no struggle, no vehicle, just an empty space in the snow. I quickly turned around and ran back to the cabin, locking the door behind me. But as soon as I did, the frantic knocking returned, louder this time. My heart pounded in my chest as I screamed for my friends. They came rushing downstairs, and we opened the door to find nothing, no one at all. The footprints had vanished. They were already filled with snow. It was as though the person had never been there at all. I still don't know what happened that night. I can't explain it. All I know is that whatever it wasn't human, and it still gives me chills just thinking about it. The eerie experience in the holiday house. It was a cold winter evening when my friend and I decided to stay at her family's holiday house for the night. The area was quiet, as most people had left for the season. We arrived in the afternoon, and the house had that empty, almost abandoned feel to it. After a fun night at a party, we returned to the house around 12:30 a.m. As we approached the driveway, I noticed something odd. The gate was wide open. I was sure I had locked it before leaving, so it made no sense that it would be open now, especially with no one around. I didn't mention it to my friend, trying to brush it off, but deep down, I felt uneasy. We went inside and made ourselves a snack. But suddenly, my friend rushed out of the kitchen, almost knocking me over, panicked. She was convinced someone was outside. She had heard footsteps. My heart skipped a beat, but we decided to stay quiet and listen. The silence in the house was deafening, and soon we heard the unmistakable sound of someone trying to open the back door. The sound of scraping and the jiggling of the handle made it clear that someone was trying to break in. We quickly decided to leave. Gathering our things, we rushed to the front door. Just as we were about to leave, there was a loud bang from the backyard, followed by the terrifying sound of hundreds of birds screeching at once. The noise was almost deafening, and in our panic, we rushed to the car without even properly putting our belongings inside. We started the car in a rush, my heart still pounding in my chest, and as we reversed out of the driveway, we saw someone running towards us from the side of the house. We floored the gas pedal and didn't stop until we were miles away, the fear still gripping us as we drove through the darkened streets. We spent the rest of the night awake, too frightened to sleep, knowing that whatever had happened at that house, it wasn't something normal. The strange encounter in the basement. When I was 10 years old, my family decided to renovate our bedrooms, so we had to sleep in the basement for the weekend. The basement was dark and cold, with only the faint glow of a nightlight to guide us. My younger brother, Ben, who was just 1 at the time, had a crib set up next to the pull-out couch where I would sleep. Despite the darkness and the strange sounds of the house settling, I felt somewhat okay with Ben being there. His presence made the basement less terrifying, somehow. That night, I woke up to hear Ben crying. It wasn't his usual soft whimpering, it was loud, panicked, almost desperate. I rushed to his crib, thinking something was wrong. But when I got there, I saw him standing up, pointing towards the far corner of the basement. I followed his finger, and what I saw made my heart freeze in my chest. In the farthest corner, near the boiler room, there was a dark shape. It was too dark to make out clearly, but I felt like someone, or something, was watching me. The air grew thick, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Then, I heard it. A faint noise from the boiler room, like something had fallen over. I quickly grabbed Ben and fled from the basement, my heart pounding in fear. I didn't stop to look back, just ran up the stairs and slammed the basement door behind me. To this day, I don't know what Ben had seen, but it was enough to make me never step foot in that basement again. The memory still haunts me, and I always wonder what was really lurking down there. The creepy knock at the cabin door. It was a cold winter night in the mountains of South Lake Tahoe. My friends and I had rented a large, rustic cabin for a weekend getaway. The place was tucked away in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense trees and miles of snow-covered ground. The isolation was part of the charm, but as the night fell, something didn't feel quite right. On the third night, we were all sitting around the fireplace, enjoying drinks and chatting. The snowstorm outside was growing fiercer, and the wind howled against the wooden walls. Around midnight, I got up to grab a glass of water from the kitchen. The air was still, and the house was eerily quiet, the only sound being the crackling of the fire in the living room. As I crossed the cabin toward the kitchen, I heard a sharp knock at the front door. It was so sudden, so loud that it made me jump. At first, I thought I must have misheard. Maybe the wind had made a noise or something had shifted outside. But then, there was another knock. This one was even more frantic, almost desperate. I froze for a moment, wondering who could be out there at this hour. We hadn't seen any other cars or people for miles. And why would anyone be knocking in a snowstorm? Maybe someone was lost or needed help, I thought. I couldn't just ignore it. I approached the door cautiously, feeling my heart rate speed up. I looked through the peephole, but it was pitch black outside. There was no sign of anyone. Still, the knocking continued, each hit louder and faster than the last. My hand shook as I reached for the door handle. I asked, "Who is it?" The knocking stopped, but there was no response. I called out again, my voice trembling now. Still no answer. That's when I heard something that made my blood run cold, a faint scraping sound from the outside. I immediately stepped back, locking the door behind me, feeling the weight of the silence press in on me. I wasn't sure what to think, but the feeling of dread was unmistakable. I waited for a few more seconds, my heart pounding in my chest, and then opened the door just slightly, leaving the chain lock on. I peeked outside. The snow was coming down heavily, and everything seemed still. The only signs of life were the faint footprints in the snow leading away from the cabin, disappearing into the woods. I closed the door, my mind racing. Who had knocked? Why were there no footprints leading up to the door? How could they have gotten here in the first place? Feeling uneasy, I decided to follow the footsteps, hoping to figure out what was going on. I threw on my boots and jacket, stepped out into the storm, and tried to keep the prints in sight before the wind filled them up. I followed the tracks, but as I got closer to the edge of the property, they stopped. No more footprints, no signs of a vehicle. It was as if whoever had been walking had simply disappeared. I stood there in disbelief, my breath visible in the cold night air, trying to process what I was seeing. There was no logical explanation for it. I turned quickly, panic rising in my chest, and rushed back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. Just as I locked it, the knocking started again. This time, it was faster and louder than before. I screamed for my friends, and one by one, they came rushing down the stairs, asking what was going on. I didn't know how to explain it. I was shaking, my mind racing for any possible explanation. We opened the door, but there was no one there. The snow was undisturbed, and the footprints were completely filled in. It was as if nothing had ever happened. No one believed me. My friends just looked at me like I was losing my mind, but I knew what I had seen. We stayed up the rest of the night, not daring to go outside again. We packed our things and left the cabin as soon as the first light of dawn broke. Even now, I can't explain it. Was it just my mind playing tricks on me? Or was there something truly unsettling about that cabin? To this day, the memory of the frantic knocking and the footprints that just disappeared still haunts me. I can't help but wonder if someone, or something, was trying to get in. I haven't gone back to that cabin since, and I don't think I ever will.